Welcome to GC 204, Lecture 7, Reinforcement and Punishment. Introduction. Changes in behavior according to Skinner are the result of an individual's response to events, stimuli that occur in the environment. The voluntary behavior is either strengthened or weakened by the immediate presence of a reward or punishment. Objectives. At the end of this lecture, students should be able to 1. Describe reinforcement and punishment. 2. Discuss types of punishment. 3. Enumerate the implications of punishment on learners and learning. Reinforcement. The principle of reinforcement refers to an increase in the frequency of a response that is immediately followed by a certain consequence. It means that any consequence increasing the frequency of any behavior may be referred to as reinforcement. Reinforcement has been observed to operate so much in most human behavioral activities that a law of reinforcement has been established. It states that any behavior that is followed by positive or a removal of a painful stimulus, negative reinforcer, results in an increased probability of emission of that behavior. Akínbóyè, 1984. Types of reinforcement. B.F. Skinner, 1948, identifies two types of reinforcement, positive and negative reinforcement, which essentially constitutes the two kinds of events that can increase the frequency of behavior or decrease the probability of emission of behavior. Schedules of reinforcement. Schedule of reinforcement may be described as the rule that describes the pattern in which a consequence follows behavior. Therefore, reinforcement as a form of learning technique is always administered according to some schedules. Including in the schedules are continuous reinforcement, intermittent reinforcement, interval schedule of reinforcement, ratio schedule of reinforcement, fixed interval, fixed ratio schedule, variable interval and variable ratio schedule. Continuous reinforcement. This means that every instance of desirable behavior is reinforced, though circumstances of a natural context may not always make it possible for a particular behavior to be continuously reinforced. Other contexts may provide continuous program of reinforcement. Intermittent reinforcement. Reinforcing the instance of behavior that is desirable may not always be possible in natural settings. Behaviors in such contexts are intermittently reinforced. This implies that reinforcement is administered only after some responses have been emitted. When reinforcement is intermittently administered, a number of schedules may be planned to maximize and maintain response emission. A practical example is the reinforcements given to a teenager after a successful study for 1 hour at each session of reading. Among the schedules to be planned to maximize and maintain response emission include the following. 1. Interval schedule of reinforcement. That is, when the reinforcers are administered after a period of time, an interval has passed between each administration. 2. Ratio schedule of reinforcement occurs when a reinforcer is only delivered after the emission of a certain number of desired responses. 3. Fixed interval schedule of reinforcement occurs when an interval schedule of reinforcement is administered on an unvarying schedule basis. 4. Fixed ratio schedule of reinforcement requires that a number of responses must be emitted before a reinforcer is delivered. 5. Variable interval schedule of reinforcement. This is when the time interval between the delivery of reinforcer changes. 6. Variable ratio schedule of reinforcement occurs when there is variation in ratio in terms of the ratio between unreinforced and reinforced responses. Punishment. Punishment in psychology is defined as the presentation or occurrence of a stimulus that is considered to be noxious. This examination of punishment shall be primarily related to situations in which the presentation of a particular stimulus is presumed to weaken or decrease the probability of a response being made. Simply put, punishment is the presentation of aversive or painful stimulus. Skinner's main argument against the use of punishment is that it is ineffective in the long run. It appears that punishment simply suppresses behavior, and when the threat of punishment is removed, the rate with which the behavior occurs returns to its original level. Thus, punishment often appears to be very successful when, in fact, it has produced only a temporary effect. Other arguments against the use of punishment is as follows. 1. It causes unfortunate emotional byproducts. The punishment organism becomes fearful, and this fear generalizes to a number of stimuli related to those present as the punishment was occurring. 2. It indicates what the organism should not do, not what it should do. Compared to reinforcement, punishment conveys virtually no information to the organism. Reinforcement indicates that what was done is effective in the situation. Therefore, no additional learning is required. Very often, punishment informs the organism only that the punished response is one that will not work to bring reinforcement in a given situation, and additional learning is required to hit on a response that works. 3. It justifies inflicting pain on others. This, of course, applies to the use of punishment in child rearing. When children are spanked, the only thing may be learning is that, under some circumstances, it is justifiable to inflict pain on others. 4. Being in a situation where previously punished behavior could be engaged in without being punished may excuse a child to do so. Thus, in the absence of a punishing agent, children may swear, break windows, disrespectful to elderly people, push smaller children around, and so on. These children have learned to suppress these behaviors when they could lead to punishment, but in the absence of a punishing agent, there is no reason to avoid engaging in these activities. 5. Punishment elicits aggression towards the punishing agent and others. Punishment causes the punished organism to become aggressive, and this aggression may cause additional problems. For example, our penal institutions, which use punishment as their major means of control, are filled with highly aggressive individuals who will continue to be aggressive as long as punishment or the threat of punishment is used to control their behavior. 6. Punishment often replaces one undesirable response. For example, a child who is spanked for making a mess may now cry instead, just as a person punished for stealing may now become aggressive and commit even more crimes when he or she has the opportunity. Negative reinforcement. Consequences of behavior may either be positive or aversive in nature. Aversive consequences may involve the removal of some punishing events contingent on the person making a response. This is termed negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is thus associated with an increase in the likelihood of the occurrence of the responses that immediately preceded the termination of the aversive condition. It should be noted that negative reinforcement is not punishment. It is indeed the opposite of punishment. Negative reinforcement thus results in increased frequency of desirable behavior when the painful stimulus has been eliminated. Punishment on learners and its implications on learning. It is generally recommended that teachers should refrain from the use of punishment. Through social learning, punishment may help a student learn that brutality is an acceptable form of behavior. Many instances of failure may damage the student's academic performance. Failure also leads to a lowering of the student's level of aspiration. Other possible outcomes of punishment are school absenteeism, dropouts, vandalism in schools, excessive anxiety, conformity, and fear. Summary. In this lecture, you have learned about reinforcement, types of reinforcement, extinction, punishment, use of punishment, conditions under which punishment could be used, and implications of punishment on learners and learning. End of Lecture 7. Thank you for listening.